Hello, welcome to the podcast.
You.
How you doing?
Thanks for having me on.
So, today we're gonna be talking about depression.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
Very, very
especially
interesting.
amongst medical students. Maybe before we start, you could introduce yourself.
Oh, yeah, we have to go there, right?
Yeah,
I say this because one of the things that I find more challenging than a Herculean journey is introducing myself to people. So I'm gonna give it
yeah,
a shot anyway. My
yeah,
name is Abdoulie Jatta, and I guess it has to do with uh, what psychologists call the complexity of identity. So, trying to condense oneself in one or two sentences to people, it's like in terms of describing oneself is it's extremely difficult. But like I just
yeah.
said, my name is Abdullah.
I hate that
Yeah,
question
and
even.
I yeah, it's
Yeah, it's as if
so
as they ask you completely forget your entire identity and you don't know who you
it's
are.
yes,
But yeah,
it's
just a
that
just a
very
brief
nature.
little intro.
Yeah, so I am a graduate of medicine. I actually attended the famous Latin America School of Medicine, and yeah, if you have like talking of how complex it is for me to describe myself, Danny, if you have one or two specific questions that you want me to answer about myself, you can tag a lot. That's
Okay,
the only
sure.
thing
Like
I can say for now.
maybe just your name, maybe your country that you're from. You already said where you
Oh
study,
yes, country,
and then like
country.
some interests.
Yes, country. I am a Gambian national, and yes. So for those of you who don't know where Gambia is, because of how small we actually located right inside another country called Senegal. So we are surrounded on all three sides actually, so which is interesting. My interests are basically mental health, you know, and anything related to medicine. So I'm very much into the medical world. When it comes to mental health, I actually did a short course um, on Coursera through the University of Sydney. It lasted about about 2 months. So it's called positive psychology and mental health. So those are my
Okay,
interests.
great, great. And we also studied together in Cuba, and we graduated
Oh
the same
yes,
year as well.
yes, yes. It was it was
Wonderful.
um it was a very beautiful journey. Of course, interwoven with a lot of challenges here and there. But yes, we were able to make it. We were able to cruise through. And today, yes, we can say, we deserve everything that comes along with it.
Yeah, and so I guess we are kind of the perfect people to be talking about um, the prevalence of depression, I guess, amongst medical students. Why is it so important that we talk about this topic today?
Yes, it's extremely important due to the prevalence nature, like you just said, the prevalent nature of this particular mental health issue among medical students. If you go through the most, recent research findings, for example, one that just recently came out of the University of, I'm saying Sydney again because I just made mention of Sydney, but it's actually University of Singapore, where they used sort of like a systematic review on this particular mental health issue, and then like it's just crazy, man. Because about 33.5% of the students have actually been diagnosed of depression. So that's just shows how and we are not just talking about students like generally speaking. No, we're talking about those people that are actually receiving medical education. And then a lot of people out there who think those are the people that ought to be, or we are the people that ought to be,
Yeah, we should be
exempted from this,
immune.
especially
Yeah, immune to
immune
depression,
or something like that, for lack of a
or
better
know how
word,
to handle
you
it.
know,
Yeah.
handle it, and it's just goes to show how important it is for us to talk about this. And then who are better out there to talk about this than people that are in the process? I always call it like a Herculean sort of a journey, because
Mhm.
and so there are unique challenges that medical students go through that usually lead to some of these issues. So, and we ought to talk about it. We ought to talk about it.
Yeah. I believe like a lot of people, they know medical school is difficult, right? But unless you're, like I always say, unless you're in the situation itself, you would never fully understand, right? What are some like how you call it? What are some challenges or features, when it comes to being a medical student that you think is increasing the risk of someone, experiencing depression, right? I'll give one, right? I think
Right,
lack of sleep
right.
is definitely one that will cause more the increased cause of depression in students, because I don't know about you, but my average sleep when I was a medical student was at least average 4 hours, because you'd go to classes finish at a reasonable time, and then you still have to study, right? So you can't just sleep early, and so a lot of times I would sleep at 12, you know 1, 2, and then you have to wake up at 5, prep for 6, you know 7. What other things do you think?
Um, yes, and this lack of sleep, or we can say sleep disturbances, or like a disorganization in your sleep pattern, that is usually caused by one major thing that a lot of us or a lot of medical students seem to either overlook, or maybe like subconsciously they know it, but it doesn't really come out that much. It has to do with like the sort of like high academic, pressure that we all go
Mm,
through,
yeah,
which is
yeah,
evident. Maybe we don't really think too much about it, but yes, apart from that high academic pressure, we have a lot of, you know, expectations to meet, you know. So, in order to meet those expectations, of course, you need to go through sleepless nights. Some people have like 2 hours of sleep, 3 hours of sleep, maybe four, 3 times a day, or even more than that. And so, not just that, like the intense workload. If you are to couple that, if like your sleep, if this particular high academic expectation is making you not to have enough sleep, then you interweave that with this intense workload that comes along with it. Like you going for your internship, for example, wherein you have to do your rotations in different wards for like hours, even a full day, or even some people it goes for like 24 hours. For other people, it goes for like 32 hours. For others, it might even go to 36 hours. Who knows? There
yeah.
is this friend of mine who called me the other day, and he started talking, and I'm like, um, dude, you realize whatever you're saying is like you're mumbling. You're just yapping, but nothing coherent is coming out of your mouth. What is happening? So guess what? He told me he spent like 2 consecutive days at the hospital. So that is just too much for a human being to carry. Like it's just a lot. And not just that, like I've talked about these high expectations that come along with it, the intense workload, but also there's something that we always have as a challenge, which is mostly overlooked again, and that has to do with the fact that we have this surrounding stigma around mental
Mm-hmm.
health issues among medical students, which is a huge
Mm,
problem because I, it, I mean, I haven't met any let me say I haven't really met any student or medical student who comes out like this and say to everybody, hey, guys, my friends, you guys are my friends, and this is what I'm going through. It's very, very rare. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, okay, but it's very, very rare due to that sort of like, and it's very ironic because we are supposed to be the ones that are, that are in the
Advocating for
healthcare
help.
system and,
Mhm.
well educated on mental health issues, but a lot of the times we behave like we are in the military, like you should not be seen as somebody who is weak, or you should not be seen as somebody who is going through mental health issue. So you just consume it yourself without letting it go. Not just letting it go, because that's why it's a mental health issue. Of course, it's very much difficult for you to just let it go. It doesn't just come and you let it go like that. If it were
Yeah,
just up to you, you wouldn't have been going through it, but you just keep it to yourself. Let me put it that way. You just absorb it yourself, and whatever that you're going through, you don't want to share it with other people that surround you, loved ones, of course. And then the other issue is like you don't even have much time to sit down with those loved ones to explain yourself, to
yeah,
to pour out your
yeah.
your
Let
just
alone time with yourself either. Sometimes you're so
exactly.
busy
That's the
that
point.
because you don't have time to think.
You don't
Like I've
even.
yeah, like recently I've been more into like slowing down and mindfulness and like doing things, like not trying to always be doing something. So like for example, I would like when I'm bathing, right, when I'm taking a shower, I would always like bring my speaker in and play some music or play some podcast to like kind of distract my mind. But like nowadays I'm just letting not playing anything, right, letting myself just you know reflect. And I think that's something that most medical students don't have time to do, right? Because they're always thinking about the next, exam or the next
The
practical.
next exams.
Yeah,
So
and
it's like a
that
roller coaster.
yeah, and that as well as like medical school is pretty competitive. I'm not much of a competitive person, but there are people that go above and beyond. Like they'll do anything to get on top and like to put anybody down. You know, that's just the nature of it, right? And that could definitely
So
cause you to be
those are
depressed.
some of those stressors that are specific to mental, medical education. Like the
Yeah,
things that you just mentioned, they are the
yeah,
stressors that usually are the major, for lack of a better word here, orchestrators when it comes to these particular issues.
yeah. Like
Like
competition,
like you just said, this
comparison.
the competition, and it's like a roller coaster thing that you just wake up the next day, you're up to the another thing, you have to read for a particular test, another rotation is waiting for you, probably you failed one or two things that you need to catch up, like it's just a
Yeah,
lot.
or also
So
you're studying something and then let's say, the next week you have a next test on something else, but then you haven't really grasped that one. So it's like it's a growing backlog of things that you need to like review to the point where it might get a little overwhelming. But what is the difference between like, like how do you know if you're depressed versus burnout versus like just tired?
so,
Like
just being, you know
yeah, because like a lot of the
or
symptoms
just
is
just be
pretty much the
just
same,
just
right?
being in a low.
Like
Yeah, so
difficulty concentrating, you have like feelings of hopelessness and stuff, and like maybe you lost interest in some activities. Like a lot of those qualities are shared by a lot of things, right? Maybe you're just actually tired, right? Or like you're not actually depressed. So like how do you go about like diagnosing someone with depression?
that's a very good question, because here is the thing. I was saying this, or like you just said, if you're just in a low mood, or you're just sad, or you just lack concentration, for example, and you say you are depressed, I mean, it doesn't really work that way.
Mm-hmm.
So due to these cluster of signs and symptoms that we have, we need to have a criteria, and for that, the most short one for that matter is the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of the psychiatric disorders. United States, whatever psychiatric association. So for
Hmm.
that, there is a mnemonic that usually people use, people that are very much interested in these mental health issues use. It's called CAPS. So it's SIGE and CAPS, like CAPS. So
Hmm.
basically, like the S, the first S stands for like sleep disturbances that we were talking about. So the sleep disturbances, here is the irony. The sleep disturbances, when it comes to that particular aspect of the diagnostic statistical manual of the DSM-5, sorry,
Yeah.
it could be you sleeping a lot, which is hypersomnia, sorry, or it could be like you not sleeping very well, which is insomnia. All right.
Hmm.
So I've actually spoken to people, all right, who tell me like when they're sad, very very sad, like when they have prolonged sadness, they sleep a lot, like they can sleep for hours. All right.
Hmm.
So it's not just not sleeping well, which is the insomnia part, which is usually like you waking up, especially very, very early in the morning, like early morning awakening. But it could be you sleeping a lot, you know.
Yeah,
So
like maybe more than eight
so
hours.
exactly, it's possible. It's very much possible. So it's not like whenever like we're talking about the sleep disturbances in the depression, like you're not sleeping. No, I mean it could
I
be like
you
you're
know
sleeping a lot.
just to add to that, like I don't know why, but I feel like after doing all of like the years of med school and um like my sleep habits kind of changing. Like for me, I can sleep 4 hours, right? And I will wake up 4 hours after any time that I sleep. Like my body will just wake up after 4 hours with no alarm. But I noticed that if I sleep more, I get more tired than if I sleep less. So yeah, so
Improvements,
sleep is
yes.
definitely a tricky quality, I guess, as the first diagnostic characteristic is it's kind of it varies. It's like on a scale.
Yeah. So, but here is the other thing that I failed to mention. These um, symptoms that I'm mentioning now, first of which I just said sleep disturbances, you need to have at least five of them. All right,
Mm,
five of them, at least five of them for a period of 2 weeks. All right, for a period of like 2 weeks,
consecutively.
and one of which must be you having like a depressed mood or you lacking interest, which I'm going to talk about shortly. So first, I talked about sleeplessness, or you sleeping a lot, right? So you have interest, like your loss of interest. So when we say loss of interest here, we're saying that the things that you used to have like interest in, for example, I very much love certain aspects of medicine, especially cardiology, and
Hmm.
I'm always, checking on my ECG lectures, going through my, like everything when it comes to the ECG, I love it. Like there's not a day that passes without me going through a particular ECG. So if I were to be depressed, I think that's the first thing I'm gonna lose interest in. So when we talk about
Okay.
lack of interest here, we're saying you have something inside in the psychological term. It's in psychological term. Sorry, it's called anhedonia. So you will have like a complete lack of interest in the things that you usually have interest in. So like there is guilt as well. All right. You might be guilty. Like so when you say guilt, it might be like a sense of like worthlessness as well. Like you feel like you're just worthless.
Yeah.
And guess what? Like um this comes to play a lot among medical students because you're going to medical school for a long period of time. All
Yeah.
right, whether you like it or
Six,
not,
seven
to become
years.
a medical doctor, you need to go to school for like 7 years, in other situations, it might even be like more than that, because especially if you want to do some other things because you're doing your medical school as well. So, and then guess what? Next minute you see your friends, your high school, you know, the people that you went with in the same high school, for example, or primary school, they're getting married, they have kids, they're lawyers today because, being a lawyer is just 4 years unless you want to do the LLM, whatever program.
Yeah.
But and then you're done, and then you're
Yeah,
getting married, you're out there.
I realized like after we graduated, and well, even before we graduated, you see all your friends, progressing through different life stages, same thing like you said, like being married, having kids, maybe like they have a family now, maybe like they have like they seem like, this is like coming back to the idea of comparison again. It's like they seem like they have everything in order, they're living away from their parents and stuff, and then we're here, we're freshly graduated, we're kind of still not fully independent, and like that can also kind of take a toll on your head, on your mind, right? Like, am I like,
Yes, yes,
like, so yeah.
it does. In your mind, in your head, you're like, yeah, I'm like this sense, like feeling of worthlessness, like you are not worthy of anything that is good. Well, it's something that can tag along because of that. That's just an example. I'm not trying to say that every student, that a medical student that goes through depression has that particular symptom called worthlessness due to that particular thing, of the person trying to, psychoanalyze the progress of their schoolmates, ex-schoolmates, whatever. But it might be triggered by other things. Maybe you failed your exams. Maybe there is this particular test, or there's this particular rotation that you are doing, and you failed it. Or probably there is this crazy professor, um,
Yeah.
or medical officer, MO, who just tells you the worst things ever, like,
Mhm.
make you feel not worthy of yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, which is crazy, which every medical student goes through. And
Yeah.
later on we got to talk about some of the good
Culture.
defense mechanisms to use in order to be able to avoid yourself going through some of these things.
Yeah.
There is no medical student. You be the smartest, or you being considered the worst in your class. There is no medical student who doesn't go through certain aspects of what we are saying here. So
Yeah.
you just have to, you know,
Yeah.
tag along with it, and make sure you just concentrate on the mission. So
Yeah.
like moving on. Mhm.
Yeah, moving on.
Yes.
I have a lot to add, but I'll add that after you finish your diagnostics. Let's go.
Yes. So the other thing, apart from feeling worthless or like guilty all the time, um, you might lose concentration. So loss of concentration is another important aspect. Psychomotor agitation is another aspect. Like you've been restless, or you've been slowed in your movements. By which we mean you can just be lying down, doing nothing, like just stagnant like that. Or you might be restless in your movements as well. The other issue that we need to keep in mind has to do with suicidal thoughts or suicidal
Mm,
ideation. And here, this is absolutely important because according to that research that I was talking about, that came out recently from the University of Singapore, like about 23% of the students that were diagnosed, medical students we are talking about here, they were diagnosed of depression, had suicidal ideation, suicidal thoughts, which is crazy. It's just too much. It's a lot. And we are talking here of particular systematic review. So it's like, it's just crazy.
from
This
multiple sources, yeah.
how exactly. So when it comes to that, let me talk just a little bit about that. When it comes to suicidal ideation, we are not saying it just has to be active suicidal thoughts. Okay, so in psychology, we have a difference between passive suicidal thoughts and active suicidal thoughts. So
Yeah.
when you say active one, that's the one. When we talk about suicide, a lot of the time, that's where a lot of people mind go to. because when you say suicide, oh, you want to kill yourself.
Yeah,
Okay, you say we want
ropes
to kill
and like
yourself
hangings
in
and
an active sense or in a passive sense. Okay, so active would mean okay, you have the tools ready. Okay,
yeah.
okay, like you want to kill yourself, you already have a plan to accomplish it. All right. So, but
Mm-hmm.
when we talk about passive suicidal thoughts, we're just saying you have like it's like you crossing the road and then you're like you tell yourself like deep down in your head you're talking to yourself, you're saying, well, I think it would be better if a car just runs me down here and I die.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
that's
yeah.
different from you planning like having an active plan to kill yourself. It's just that
Okay,
you
that's
have
a
a passive
difference.
suicidal. Both
Mm-hmm.
of these two things are very, very important. Be it the passive one or the active one, it doesn't matter. It just has to be a suicidal ideation or a particular thought that you have for self-harm. For example, it might be to the point of death. So those are some of the cluster of symptoms that we need to deal with. We need to look into as medical. Uh, we are speaking specifically to people that are still going through the medical school career.
Yeah.
To be very, very mindful of these cluster of signs and the cluster of symptoms. If you have five of these or more, but guess what? One of these things that I you need to have at least five, but one of them must be a depressed mood or lack of interest. Remember, on the interest aspect, I talked about anhedonia, you losing interest in the things that you used to have interest in. So,
Yeah.
well, that is it. If you have this, you are considered depressed, and you need to seek help. You
Okay.
were about to add something with regard. I can't seem to remember now. You were about to
Oh,
say something.
required to say what? Oh,
You were
say
about to
something
say
about.
something when I was talking about the
Oh,
suicidal ideation and stuff like that.
oh no. I was just going to say that. So after someone has, you know, diagnosed themselves, right? After going through this criteria, um, who can they go to help to? Because that's a good question. That's a good question. Like, who can they go? Because I feel like a lot of people, like you say, bottle up their emotions and their feelings. Especially in medical school, I feel like it's looked down upon to show any sort of weakness. And so, who can you go to?
So, like, before going up there, first, we need to work on ourselves on the inside
Mm,
first. And then, you know, I'm not saying we need to successfully work on the inside and then we go to people. Then that would be, a little bit useless. So, but what
yeah,
I'm trying to say is first, you have to work on yourself and then, without any sort of like, a criteria of you being successful in that regard, and then you go to other people, but you still have to look toward the inside. This is what I mean. You need um, to have that particular self reflection. Like, okay,
yeah.
what is it that is causing me to go through this particular event in my life? What is it? You need to look for the source. It might be
I
relationship between.
yeah. No, go
Go on, go on.
ahead, go ahead.
No, no, no. Okay. So,
Yeah,
okay,
go ahead.
it might not necessarily be related to medical school itself, even though, like we said, medical school has, certain unique, um, you know, unique things or unique challenges that a lot of people go through, and this is why they become depressed. It might not necessarily be related to that. It might be related to your personal life. You probably have a relationship with somebody, be it a romantic one or a familiar one, and then it's kind of messed up, and that is all triggering all of these cluster of symptoms in your life, right? So
Yeah.
you
So
have to ask yourself.
yeah, you have to ask yourself. So like one of the tools that I've like learned recently this year is like they call it like the five whys, right? Basically, you're
Okay,
asking
interesting.
yourself why for at least five times, and that's usually will help you get to the root of the issue. So like for example, if you say, "Oh, um, I'm depressed," right? Why are you depressed? And I said, Maybe like I'm not sleeping well, and then you say, why am I not sleeping well? Maybe because I scroll social media every time until like 12 when I could just sleep at 9. And then why am I doing that? Because I'm stressed about um some or I have a project that I need to do, or like a presentation to make, and I just don't want to think about it. And so like, why are you procrastinating? And then you'll be like, maybe there's no reason. There's no reason to procrastinate. And then you just,
Right.
find the solution there, or you find a reason why you're procrastinating, you know. And so like the
Right.
five whys is definitely a good way to like find out what's the real root
Yes,
issue.
it's a very useful tool. It's a why stratification, which actually gives you the why suppositum, by which you mean like you keep saying why. It's like if you are doing an autopsy, like, okay, what caused this? What caused this disease? What must have caused this? The cause of death. Then you narrow it down to one thing. So you do the stratification and then you do the suppositum. It's very, very useful. And I mean, it's a good thing that you just shared that out there. It's very, very useful, and
Yeah,
it
it's
helps a
simple,
lot,
and
lot of
it
people.
works. Yeah, it works a
Yes,
lot. So
yes.
like moving on,
So
what
after
kind of practices? Huh?
so after like asking yourself these whole very important question, which is like the four most important question is the why aspect of it, then you can have an open conversation with people out there. Like, so when you talk about people out there, we're not just saying any random person out there, okay? Because this is very, very important. You might be feeling depressed in a medical school setting, and then you go out there and open yourself to somebody, all right, maybe your classmate, or who knows. You both are going to medical school. I'm not saying, okay, here is a little bit PS here. I'm not saying nobody should go out there and have an open conversation with your classmates that are also going to medical school. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you have to be careful, because some other medical school colleagues of yours might also be going through the same situation. They might not
Mm,
necessarily be open about it, and they might not even
mm.
have a solution to it. So they probably are gonna tell you the worst things ever, like in terms of advice. I'm not saying like trying to bring you down, but they might even the words that might be poured out from their mouth might lead to even an even greater depression in your life.
Is it
Okay,
like shared,
so could you imagine like
depression?
you?
Is like you and I are depressed, and then we're both like kind of going down in the dumps, and like
Yes,
empathizing with
yes.
each other, but it's kind of like brewing more depression because we're both depressed at the same time. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So like you have that sort of, for a lack of a better word here, I'm gonna be using a more of the Eastern language, which is like more of like the uh, sharing bad energy, you know. So that is very, very, very dangerous. It's not even recommended at all. So
Collective
you need
depression.
to be careful. Yes, you need to be careful. Then you look at the people that are you know, the people in your life that surround you in your life that you think are going to be helpful in this situation, in this particular phase of your life that you're going through. And again, you're not alone. Like that's one of the things that everybody needs to remember. Anybody who is going through this, you need to remember that you are not alone. Okay? You are never alone. There must be one or two people out there in your life who will be more than willing to talk to you, who will be more than willing to advise you, to like to go along with you, to tag along with you, go through this particular Herculean sort of a depressive journey that you are going through. So you're never alone. Never sit down. And especially if you are going through these suicidal thoughts, ideation, and stuff like that, trust me, you are never alone. You will always have people out there who will be more than willing to talk. So the other thing that I find extremely useful is like when people that are going through this in medical school approach their psychology professors. Okay, those ones
Mm,
are already trained medical, mental personnel. All right, so and there is no psychology professor. I'm certain about this. I mean, I'm sure you are too. I don't think there is any psychology professor out there who will tell you, oh, no, get out of my office. I mean,
Yeah,
this is not
it,
there's
it's
no
all
way
in
they
your
will do
mind.
that.
Yeah, I don't
Exactly.
think I've ever had like came across a psychology professor that wasn't like, very
Nice.
understanding and nice and like,
Exactly,
you know.
exactly. Because this is what they deal with. This is what they deal with on a daily basis, whether we know it or not. So some of us might see them in classes and we feel like they're not, nice because they say one or two things in class. No, but they're very nice people. All of them are nice. So approach some of those people. Even it could be like the head of department, right? You go there and say, hey, I'm going through this. I don't know if you could help. I mean, they're not even gonna charge you. That's the beauty of it. We like medical students have all of these opportunities, and then they're not making good use of it. All right, you go out there to see a psychologist, especially where I am here right now. Just to see a psychologist, you need to pay 25 euros, for example. But if you're in a medical school setting, come on, you are part of the
You have access to
student
all kind
body,
of
so you have
specialists
access
and
to all kind of stuff. So you just go approach a particular professor and say, hey, can I? You have a minute, please? You sit down with a person, have an open conversation with a person. So it might not necessarily be a professor. It might not necessarily be your own colleague that you're going through with in medical school, which you have to be careful about, like I said. It could also be, your family members. All right. It could be your mother. It could be your father. These are people that are in your lives as well, whether we have time for them or not due to the circumstances surrounding our medical career or journey. It's very, very important. You can sit down with such people or have a phone conversation with them and explain yourself. Your lovers, I mean, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whoever the person is, your fiance, like you have an open dialogue with such people. The other thing that you need to remember is always like the past success stories that you have. Always. Like
mm,
you are going through this. Okay. In the past, I went through this and I was able to fight against it. I was able to become successful. I went through something worse than this. Today, I am
yeah.
in a medical school. I never thought I would have ever be in a medical school, but today I am. There are a lot of people that I was with in high school, and they are not in a medical school because they don't really even have the grades for it. They don't or they might not even have like the money for it. For example, it's not just about the intellectual aspect, but the financial aspect as well. So think about how lucky you are in other aspects of your life and try to sort of like consign the thought of the cause of your depression into oblivion. All right. It's
Yeah.
difficult, I know, but
Yeah.
it is very possible.
Yeah, and like that's where like the power of journaling comes in, right? Or even if you don't like to journal, like recently what I've been doing is I've been trying to find more ways to document my life, right?
Right.
All the good, all the bad. And the thing is our memories are like the the worst, right? Like we can't remember stuff once like it reaches like unless it's a significant event, you won't remember like on what were you doing on this date? I don't know, you know? And so like I've been taking different ways to like help me remember, like even though it
Right.
helps me remember the negative, it also reminds me of what I did in the past and like my achievements in the past as well. So like
Exactly.
I've been using two apps, right? One of them is oops, what is that? I've been using like an app that lets me like take photos every day. So like every day it will at a random time in the night in the day, it would say time to be real, right? The app is called Be Real. And so it would tell me to take a photo and it takes a photo of the front and the back. And the idea is you're supposed to take a photo of whatever you're doing in the moment and not like try to edit it or anything. So whatever you're doing in the moment, you take a picture of it, and
Right.
then it reminds you like every day, like or after a year on the same day, it would remind you what you did, or like you now have a catalog of everything that you're doing. So if I wanted to know,
Everything.
oh, what was I doing last month on this day, I can look at it and like, oh, I remember this. I was maybe in the hospital, this is happening and stuff like that. And also digital journals. Like I've tried physical journals and I couldn't just because I like how the physical journal reminds me like every day of what I wrote the same day, maybe 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And I was like, wow, similar to Facebook memories as well. I don't know if you've seen it, but like Facebook would sometimes pop
Right.
up a picture of you like 1 year ago or a post that you made 1 year ago. So like it's so important to be able to like document what you've done in the past so that you can actually remember. Because if not, you will not remember it and you won't be able
You
to
will,
use it
yeah,
to help you, remind
to
yourself
help
that
you.
you've done so much great things, right?
Mm. It kind of reminds me of a personal experience. Like I back when I was in Cuba, during my final year of med school, it was I could remember I was doing my final rotations, and then I received this call. It was like it was very very crazy. I was just there, and then I received a call from my sister, and then she
Mm-hmm.
said to me, "Hey, you know what? I'm sorry to disturb you, but our brother is gone." Yeah, so like right in the middle of my rotation. So so talking about this journaling thing, um, during that moment, it was extremely like emotionally very very devastating for me. Um, but guess what? This whole talking about this whole journaling thing, that's what makes me remember that I once wrote down everything that I went through on that particular day, like emotionally. I wrote
Mm-hmm.
everything down, and I use all of these self-defense mechanisms that I could in order to cruise through in that particular moment, in that particular event. So today, if I go through certain stressful events in my life, I just I just go back to my journal, and of
Mm-hmm.
course I will see other events that you know, I was able to cruise through. But these other events, if I go through it today, like even though it's a very very sad event, it's a very very fateful event. But could you imagine being in a final year of medical school? You have like barely a few weeks to go to do your medical board, like whatever medical board exams, and then your whatever you call, is it the estatal, and then you receive such a bad news, and then
Yeah.
but you were able to go through it, like you were able to use certain tools, you were able to seek support from people that love you, and then you are able to cruise through in that. So whatever sad event that might come later in the future, I mean, you could always go back to that and see, um, that you were able to win at least, against a certain uh, emotional disturbances back in the days. And this particular day in the present, you can even do better.
Yeah.
So a lot of people find that very, very helpful, and others would find it even sadder. So it all depends on you. That's why the journaling becomes important. What aspects of your journal, when you open your journal, what aspects of your journal um, are there to give you a push?
Yeah, you could
Mine
even have like a
is
journal
basically
just for your wins and a journal for your
for your wins.
little
Exactly.
challenges and things.
Your challenges and stuff like that. So uh, for me, I kind of like, not always, but sometimes I go back to that when I'm going through certain aspects of life events. Um, but what pushes me even more is like, I mean, I was about to do my exam, so like the SSL, before it comes, you do the final exams and the exam in physical, the practical exams with your professor. So I did mine in internal medicine, and I'm not just saying this out there, just to blow in my own horn. It's just to
Mm.
encourage people out there. But what I did was, like, I studied, like, despite everything that I was going through, I looked for these self-defense mechanisms, and I was able to study. I went out there, did my exams, and I was done. Like, it went good. I was done. And like today, I can go back to that and I say, hey, this is something that I went through, and it was very, very sad. but at the end of the day, I was able to push through. So, like I was saying, like somebody else might use another particular event in their lives that might not necessarily be them losing a loved one for that matter and being able to cruise through despite the challenges. It might be something very, very positive. All right. It might be very, very positive in their lives. So, yeah, that's it. That's very, very important. Journaling is very, very important.
Yeah, even if you don't like, well, what I like about digital journaling at least is you're not limited to text. So a lot of times I would like record little voice notes of like what I'm doing or like how I'm
Right,
feeling.
right,
And
right,
that's really
right,
like,
right,
not even
right.
just voice notes, but even you could record videos. And it's kind of cringe to see it, a year or two after, but like that was you, that was you in the past, and that was what you were experiencing in the past, and it
Because
feels a lot more real.
I was about to ask, I was about to ask you like what, some of those tools that you use. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah,
It's good.
so like,
It's like
yeah,
as
so
if
like
you just read my mind because you're very much into the tech world. So it would be very, very good for you to share some of those things with people out there, like
yeah,
the
the
tools
journal
that
I
you
use is
use.
called
Talk
Day
about like
One. Yeah.
okay,
Day
okay.
One
What's
is
it
a
again?
journal. Day One is like a digital journal
Okay,
app.
okay, okay.
And then
Right.
I've been getting into meditation too, but it's a little bit, it's still a work in progress. Like I don't know what I'm supposed to be feeling. Like when you start meditation, you think you're supposed to be feeling like some magical, otherworldly experience, but sometimes it's just nothing, like you don't really feel like anything. So like it's mainly that, and like even if you don't like to journal and you don't want to do any journaling, even like just taking a photo, and having it saved like in your gallery. So like I take photos almost every day about different things, like maybe what I'm eating or whatever, and I can now scroll all the way to like 2019. Like I still have photos from like med school there, and like I can just browse like randomly. And then it sometimes it would pop up a photo that made me really happy, or something like that, or like memories of the past. And so yeah, mainly just journaling, meditation, and just like trying to document your life more, which is like kind of why I love YouTube. Like I love okay, one of the things I love watching on YouTube is people doing like day in the life, right? So they basically like
Oh,
record
okay.
themselves living their normal lives, right? Like they wake up, I don't know, they make
Right.
breakfast, maybe they go out, maybe they go to work, and like I love those. Like I want to make it myself, but it's a lot of work. But I love seeing just everyday living, and I think that's like what we need to like, yeah, like documentation. Like I don't know what do you do to document your life, or like your ways of.
Um, I'm an old school type, so
Oh, you have a physical journal? Hey.
I'm an old school type, so I just take the old school route. Document everything. I think I have close to yeah, like almost five of those, and
Really?
they're like this. Yeah,
Okay.
since like I started doing this since when I was in high school. Yeah. Um. Yeah, I started back in like when I was in like junior school, but then I gave up. Like you just start and those
Yeah,
moments, life is
yeah,
not very stressful. You're just a little kid going to school and stuff like that. But then later on, from high school level, I decided to have this. Yeah,
yeah. The thing is,
I
with
have
me for
like
with me for
a bulk
physical
like
is like when I make a mistake on a physical journal, or like I skip a page, it just feels like you can't go on from there.
yeah. And then if you lose it, then you lose it. But if it is like um yeah, this is why I was asking you about like the technological tools that you use because at least some of those things it's extremely difficult to lose.
No, one thing
But
that
if you go
I
old school like me,
Mhm.
yeah, if you go old school like me and then you lose your journal, then that's it. Like your life is gone.
Yeah. No, because one mindset that completely changed, like it helped me to journal more is the mindset that you don't have to write a page all the time, right? It could just be
Right.
a sentence. What makes like for me, I'm addicted to Twitter, right? Why? Because like Twitter seems to be a social media where you just say your mind and like people might not even see it. So it's like a place where you can just send out like short messages of your inner self. It looks like, right? And
Right.
then like people that connect with you will connect with you. But one of the limits of Twitter is that you are limited to 140 characters, right? So you
Oh,
can't
yes.
go over unless you make a next tweet underneath, right? And I've been taking that approach because like what makes it addictive is just that, right? Like short little thoughts that you have during the day that you want to share, I guess, with the world. And I was like, why not just do that same concept, right? Treat my journal app or your journal, book like that, right? A place where you post short little status updates about what you're thinking at the
Uh,
time. Yeah, and that
It
dramatically
is.
lowers the pressure to have to like, oh, I need to fill this whole page because it's a journal and I have to make sure that it's written in, a way that if someone were to read it, no one is supposed to read your journal. And so like you think
No, no,
you have to write in like perfect English and perfect pronunciation and perfect like, commas and
no,
whatever.
not at all. Not at all. Not at
Yeah, so
all.
no, some people think it's like that. Like someone will read this
Yeah,
in the
yeah, yeah.
future and I have to make it perfect. So yeah, so like just write a little sentence a day is already a lot. And that's one thing that helping me like stay motivated to like keep the journal is just if I'm tired and I don't want to think or I'm stressed right now, I'll just write a sentence, you know.
Yeah. Wonderful. It's always good to keep record of your life, and that's what I'm saying. If I should lose my own right now, I mean that would be half of my life gone in this
Oh
way.
yeah, and then
So
another thing about digital that you should probably transition maybe is your ability to search. You can search
okay.
anything. Like let's say I was doing,
Oh yes, yes.
I was doing a course
Right,
back
right. I get.
then and I was like, where is it in my journal? I can just search it the word and it would pop up and I was like, oh okay. So that is another thing that physical journals can't do.
So if you are an old school like me, that is not really is not really a big challenge because my journals, like,
Oh, how
let's
do you
put one
structure
like
it?
this.
How do you structure it
The
so
way
that
I
it's
structure it, it's like the dates are there already, and because they're like my medical school notebooks, so I actually know where my notes are. Like, okay, if I
okay?
want to check something, I might not remember the exact page, but I will just know, okay, what part of the book it is found in. So I just,
Okay.
but yeah,
Yeah, so
it's a good thing that you're sharing something with regard the whole, technological aspect of like keeping records and journaling and stuff like that. Because yeah,
yeah, because
that's
I
the
think it's
age
very
that we live
important
in.
because if you
It
don't,
is. It is
you will
extremely
never
important.
remember. Like there's photos and stuff, and there's like experience that I completely forgot until like the app reminded me,
Yes,
like
yes.
you did this like a year ago on the same day. And I was
Nice.
like, for real?
So you
Like I
said
don't
day
even
one, right?
remember. Yeah, day one, day one. I might link it in the
That's the day
description,
one.
but thing is it's there's a premium version, but like you could literally just use the free version. You just can't make multiple
Yeah, okay.
journals,
Yeah.
right? Everything is all in one and like
Oh,
you're limited to just photos. Um
okay.
but that's good enough for you to start because I started with the free version, but then I realized how like nice it was and then, I but it's not really that expensive either. It's like 30 30 something US a year. So if you think about it, like all the journals that you buy and maybe like pens and whatnot, and maybe it is a little expensive. It's like you're buying a book every month, but like I mean, it's not too bad.
Oh, I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't know.
but like all the features, like the search and like being able to remember stuff from the different years, and like it also has prompts. So every day it has a new
Oh, wow.
question for you. Yeah, every day it has a new question for you in the app. and you can choose to do it in the morning or like throughout your day. But like prompts is very important too, because sometimes you don't know what you want to write about.
I know. I know.
Yeah, and so for me, it's been worth it. I don't like paying for subscriptions, but you know, it's one of the things that I don't think I'll mind. Yeah,
No, not at all. Paying for it.
yeah.
That's
So I
wonderful.
guess, do you have anything to add? I might move on to like I think our last uh, big theme.
Well, yeah. So just to say that, I mean, whoever is watching this and is in a medical school and is going through, something like this or similar to it, maybe a very prolonged sort of like being low in mood or whatever it is that you might describe it, whatever, emotional disturbances that you might be going through, you're not alone. Like I was saying, you're never alone. There are people out there who are more than willing to help you. And it's not like you're the only person going through this. I mean, even though you know that you are going through it, you might not necessarily know what other people are going through. They might be hiding it as much as you are hiding it. So just make sure that you open up to people that are willing to help you and know that everything is going to be fine. I mean, like even the most intelligent medical students back, just in one way or the other go through something like this. So it's not something unique to you alone. You just have to close your eyes and make sure not to sit on it, not to like absorb everything by yourself, and seek help. That is the most important thing. And for
Yeah,
those
one.
out there who are yeah, and so for people out there who are like have the interest of studying medicine in the future, maybe they're going to high school or something, always make sure you have the right reasons. All right. Always make sure that you have the right reasons because this is extremely important. One of the causes of people going through a lot of these emotional turmoils in medical school is not though it's not just the stressors that are or the unique challenges or the stressors that are specific to medical school alone. It might also be like it might also be that at some point you have just lost interest, and then you've got just gone too far. Now you cannot just give up. So you need to have the right reasons for studying medicine. So it is extremely important.
One thing I wanted to add was I think therapy, right? Just like doing therapy, whether or not you think you need it, is I think something that everyone should do. I haven't done it yet, but like it's because there's little obstacles in the way, right? But I do plan to eventually do it, like have like therapy sessions because I think it's important. Like you can talk to friends and family, but like sometimes they might because they know you, they might not be as objective when giving advice, or like they might just tell you what you want to hear, so that you feel better, you know. So definitely therapy. I know it's not like accessible to a lot of people. Sometimes like it's just an added expense, right? But if you can, I would do it, right?
So,
I'm not there yet,
I mean,
right? I'm not there yet because of the
yeah,
financing, but like or like yeah, but like I think it's important. Like it's not just for crazy
and that takes
people
me back.
or
That takes me back to what we were talking about, like the opportunities, the countless opportunities that medical students have
Mhm.
as they are going through the medical school, because you don't really have to pay for some of these things if you don't want to. You can still use the system and get what you want without paying for it. Like I can remember there's this very smart, student. We were going to the same medical school, the same
Mhm.
faculty back in San Fuegos in Cuba. So what she did was like this. She decided to come up with her own small group. All right. I can't seem to remember the name of the group, but it's like a group that had a short meeting with one of the psychology professors, and they're like,
Mhm.
okay, we are a group of students that are going through the same rotations here and there, and like 3 times in a month, we would love to have like group therapy with you. It's not like they just went there and said we are all depressed. None of those people were depressed in the first time.
Mm-hmm.
They were just going through like any medical student out there, certain aspects of their medical journey that were very emotionally draining. So they decided to come up with this group, and then they even used to have like WhatsApp meetings. Like that was
Oh,
so
like
so
video
amazing,
calls or like just
yeah,
messages
video
or
calls and stuff. Yeah, video calls and stuff.
oh
And
wow that
most of those sessions, quote unquote, happened during the COVID. All right, during the COVID,
mm,
COVID also, it contributed a lot towards some of these things, some of these emotional disturbances in people. So anyway, that just shows how how easy it is to have access to some of these things. Like you and I here are sitting down. If we want some of these things today, unless we go to our good friends in the system, I mean, we are not be able to have it. We need to,
you
remove
pay
some
yeah.
Benjamin and then, yeah, like and pay for it, and which is extremely difficult to pay for, especially when you have to do a long session. It's very, very
Yeah, and
expensive.
like with therapists, it's like you really need to find the right one, you know. And sometimes that person that you're with is not the right one, and then you have to go and look
Yeah,
for another one, and so on and so forth. So
exactly.
one last topic, right, that I want to talk about before we leave. It's the spiciest one, right? Um, what are your thoughts on like just doctor culture, like culture amongst doctors that you know, might be also contributing to the depression, and not just with medical students, but like also recently graduated doctors. What are your thoughts on the culture as it currently stands?
So, so, so I'm, I'm always, I don't know what word to use here. It's either angry, like, amazed. I don't even know what adjective to use when I sit down and reflect on this very question that you just asked. Um, a lot of the medical doctors in the field, like a lot of MOs, for example, um, a lot of these people that medical students deal with on a daily basis, they're the very, very number one reason for some of these things happening in our medical schools. There is not sometimes there's not even a single, sort of like a supportive environment for medical students. You might only see anecdotal examples of, a few professors that are willing to help medical students. And by willing to help, I mean emotionally, psychologically. Okay. Even educationally, most of the times they fail at it. That's the problem. So, and then the worst thing is, or the thing that I hate to hear is like when some of these, so-called professors, and I'm saying so-called, by not, sort of like demeaning their degrees, whatever, not, I'm just talking about their professional lives, because it's professionalism that we are talking about here, which is extremely important in this type of situations. They will like telling you, I mean, you guys, when we were going to school, for example, we didn't have phones, we didn't have this, we didn't. So it's a lot of
Yeah.
sort of these, you know, old journey fallacy that they use. Like I call it an old journey fallacy, an old life
Hmm.
fallacy that they
Yeah.
use. They be like, oh, we expect more from you, and because of that, you know, high academic expectations that they have of students because of the differences in their times with that of ours is what is contributing to all of this. And some of them are very, very like I don't want to sugarcoat this. They're very, very nasty towards medical students. That's what it is. I don't have any other word to describe how some of these people behave. Like how do you look at a medical student, for example, who studied like all day long, all night long probably, like or half of the night, probably slept for like 3 hours or so, studying the same content. And then you have a patient, right? Some of them will do it right in front of patients, which is just beyond
Oh
me.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah, they
they like look
shouldn't.
you in the eye and be like, "You don't know anything. What is this? What are you doing?" Like, um, Like you some of them even go to the degree or to the extent of telling you right in your face that you don't deserve to be in a medical school.
Mm.
Come on, Danny. Like that's just crazy. To me,
Yeah,
that's just crazy.
yeah, like that's
So
something I don't subscribe to. Like at least, you could tell me in private, but you don't have to like
you don't have to do that. There's no reason for you to do that other than you just being, openly nasty towards other human beings. I
show
mean,
your power.
it's you show your power, show your intelligence, all that not. So I mean, you are dealing with other human beings like you who are created in the image of God. Like, why would you be so nasty towards them? And yet you expect them to do better. Like, yet you expect them to be emotionally okay. Yet you expect them to be psychologically okay. It's just crazy. So I think, medical schools need to, in fact, every medical school needs to have a therapy session, free of charge. All
Yeah,
right. I mean,
yeah.
a lot of medical schools do say they have it, but it's not really functioning. That's the thing.
No.
Most students even knows about it. They don't even encourage people to go for therapy. How are you dealing with patients on a daily basis, and you yourself, deep in your head, you are just messed up.
I mean, do you
Okay.
even have
So I
time
mean,
to go?
you don't even have the time for it. So I mean, I think the medical institutions have a long way to go, and it always makes me angry when talking about this issue because it's not like this is not something that they they are ignorant of. Like it's not like they don't know it. They do know it. They do know, that some of these things are happening. Some of these studies or some of these research findings, not even some of them, all of these research findings on depression among medical students is coming out of medical institutions. So how
Yeah.
comes they're still not addressing the issues? It's just beyond me. Are they just pulling out money, you know, putting money into these different studies and so forth? And then the results just come out, and it indicates that medical students, a lot of them, about 33.5% of them, all of them have suicidal thoughts or depression at some point in their medical career, and they are not doing anything about it. So, I mean,
Well,
it's just beyond
I
me.
I I feel like a lot of it has to do with like, okay, so like, yeah, like you're attending doctors sometimes, like because
Exactly.
they hold on to tradition, like, I don't know, like I guess the tradition is like a new doctor has to be like belittled and like, you know have a hard
Yeah, I
time,
mean, which is just ridiculous.
just to, I guess, wean out who's the stronger one of the group, and like, that's
Yeah,
one
it's
side
like a
of it.
military school, mhm.
Yeah, that's
It's
one
like a
side of
military
it,
school sort of thing.
but another side of it too is that there is, I mean, like, there is a lot of content in medical school that I don't think is possible to even cram, in those 7 years. Like like if like because like, it's like applicants coming in every year, space is limited, and like they just have to like push people out, or like as fast as possible. And if they were to give all of us, right, like ample time and like really like teach you it teach you it in the best way possible that they can, like without the fear of like rushing or anything, medical school might probably be 14 years. Right? So like there's like the education model, as well as like the toxic, traditional toxicity that is involved, like, in medicine and on a whole. A lot Those are like factors that really like probably are preventing them from making any meaningful change. Because if you say like, oh, they don't have no time, let's say we put more breaks in between, then your program will get longer. you know and
Yeah.
then some people don't like that, they don't want that. But I feel like it does stem more importantly to the culture, like just doctor to doctor culture is still not where it's supposed to be. Obviously there are exceptions. There's exceptions. There's doctors that actually, are understanding, and they don't try to belittle you.
Yes,
but
yes.
that is like rare, and that's like probably like 1%.
Extremely rare, extremely rare.
I wonder why that is
I,
though.
I can remember one of my professors is like is a urologist. When I was rotating in urology, I think that guy is one of the like the nicest, one of the nicest. I'm not saying he's the only one, but he's one of the nicest that I met. Like
Same thing,
you
you
do
know.
something wrong, he would call you right there and be like, "Oh no, this is not the way you do it. It's supposed to be like this." Like he like, and then I don't know how difficult that can be for other people. Like, why is it so difficult to be nice with other people? Like you were
Yeah,
saying, when it comes to the whole time structure, I mean, I think it's gonna be actually like a little bit difficult to adjust that due to the nature of medicine itself because it's a lot. But at least let there be this,
like a good environment, a good. Mhm.
psychologically supportive environment for medical doctors. Let these therapy sessions let it be working out. I mean, when people hear therapy, a lot of the times they have the negative connotation to it. So, but they can just call it like I don't know, whatever name. Uh, free convo session, like people just sit down, express themselves, what they're going through and stuff like that. Heads of departments, medical departments can come up and whenever people are rotating in their departments, they can have at least one meeting in that one rotation, at least one general meeting where the students can express themselves, on how they're feeling emotionally, educationally, everything. All right.
But you know what's funny about
These are
that
some of the
is
issues.
like what I realized too is that like once you are a doctor,
Right.
I think there are places or you know there are places that don't like to hear that you have any mental issue going on with you because they
There is this
believe
stigma
that
to
it
it.
will it will what do you call it, it will cloud your judgment as a doctor because you are depressed or like
Yeah.
you're you might make a mistake or like you might do this or do that. I think that's why, or like you, let's say you say that you are having suicidal thoughts or like and then they say, oh, they let you go, in worst case scenario they're like, we can't have a doctor that is not mentally there. And so
Which is true. But
definitely the
here
culture.
is the thing. Yeah, the
Mhm.
culture is so toxic in that aspect due to what you're saying. But specifically speaking to medical students, hey, if you are watching us right now and you are going through some of these things, that should not be an excuse for you to sit on it.
Yeah,
Like
as a medical student.
share it. And by sharing, medical students, you are not the ones making the final calls when it comes to these rotations. You're not the one that is making the final decisions. So when you're going through some things like this, and besides, you are not a military personnel. You are a medical student going through that particular education. So speak and speak up. Don't sit on this and suffer alone. At the end of the day, like I said, you have people that love you, that are more than willing to talk to you, and then you should not be ashamed. You should. I know, like you said, it has this stigma to it, because you are a medical doctor and I mean, you are a medical student going through the educational process and stuff like that. So when people hear that, oh, you have this suicidal ideation, and everybody's like, oh, but guess what? A lot of those people that are going, oh, like out of 10, probably 9 of them actually went through that, or like 7 of them actually went through that. If not the
Yeah,
suicidal ideation aspect, but other aspects of the cluster of symptoms that we just looked into. All
yeah,
right.
and doctors are
So
human
it's
too,
not important to speak up. They are
doctors are
humans. Even
human.
those
Yeah.
doctors that
We're
are
the
in
same
charge of your
people.
rotations, they're the
Yeah,
same people. They probably have gone through it 1,000 times already. So don't be ashamed. Speak up. Speak up. Call your friends, call your family members, call your lovers, whatever they are. Call them and tell them, hey, you know what? I'm going through this right now. I know there is no time there is very little time for that matter, even for you to sleep, but make sure you find time to find that work, sort of life balance. If not,
yeah.
it would be very, very difficult to push through in medical school.
Okay, so I guess to round things up, maybe you could share a personal thing that you like to do whenever you're depressed or overwhelmed or stressed. What personal thing do you like to do?
So, um, for me, what I think about always is this. Like I was saying earlier, if you are depressed, you need to know the cause. So I first of all have to sit down and really reflect. I'm like, why am I feeling, if not depressed, but because depression has its own cluster of symptoms that you need to, you need to have in order to diagnose yourself of being depressed. But if I'm in a low mood or I'm going through some emotional, struggle, like I like to call it, I'm like, why? Okay, those sequences of why that we were just talking about is very,
Yeah,
very important. You look at the root cause, and if you look at the root cause now, most of the times, guess what? If you are depressed, I mean, a lot of the times you're just thinking about the past, as one famous psychology puts it.
yeah,
If you're anxious, you're always thinking about the future. So what just happened in my life, okay, or what is just happening in my life that is making me so depressed for that matter. All right. So
yeah,
look for the cause. And if I look for the cause now, I'll be like, okay, I drain it down to one thing, one major cause. I'm like, okay, now this is my person. You asked for my personal way of self-defense mechanism. I turn to some supreme being up there who I consider to be my God. Okay, this is what I do. I turn out to
mm,
him, and subconsciously and consciously, like I leave up everything onto his hands. I'm like, yeah, there's someone greater than me who can make me go through this particular situation in life without having to go through this particular, emotional disturbance that I'm going through. So if I leave it
yeah,
up to him, like he calls me to do, then I have got nothing to worry about. Of course, sometimes even if you do that, you pray to your God, whoever he is in your own worldview. All right, you might not necessarily be a Christian, you might be of another worldview.
yeah.
You might be praying to nature. Who knows? So
Mhm,
whoever that particular supreme being in your own worldview is, in my own worldview, I consider him to be the God. I mean, the God who loves me. So I just leave everything up to him. Even after doing that, sometimes you still have to go. You might still go through certain, I don't know how to put this, certain tracks of like, emotional disturbance. But
mhm,
it becomes extremely helpful if you know the cause and then you find a solution. So your solution might not necessarily be turning out to the God of your worldview. It might be reading books, which I do most of the times. I read books. I try to read books that interest me. Okay.
mhm.
And of course, sometimes if you are going through depression, okay, um, like I was talking about lack of interest, which is the anhedonia. Yeah, it becomes extremely difficult to love doing what you used to love. But then, in
Mhm,
other words, you can turn out to people now to talk to them. That's where the conversation comes into play. Talking it out, letting it go, like by just sharing your experience with people that surround you. I can literally call you or another friend of mine. It might not be the person that I'm even living with. It might be somebody that I can talk to. I call the person. I'm like, hey, you know what? Do you have a free time? Like, yeah, I have a free time. Let's talk. We talk. I'm like, "Hey, dude, I'm going through this phase in my life, and it's like it's just killing me. And most of the time, you will come out of it, out of that particular conversation with a smile on your face. Okay,
mhm.
so always find your own mechanisms that work for you. That should never involve you entirely absorbing everything that you are going through, like absorbing it alone. Share it with other people. It's extremely important. I've tried it and it works super.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So, um, you know, where where can people like find you? Maybe they want some more advice. I know you have a YouTube channel.
Yeah, which I've not been uploading content, but I think I should get serious very soon. Yes,
Yeah.
and then you can also find me on Twitter. So yeah, my Twitter is Jatta underscore MD. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, Well, yeah, that's it. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Well, thank you so very much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this
Wonderful.
has been a pretty good, better than I expected conversation. Much needed in this time. For me, right, like just to end it, like what I love doing to like when I'm like kind of anxious or whatever is just having deep conversations like this about life. Not
Right,
maybe not specifically depression, but like about life. Like I would
right.
talk with somebody, like whether that be a friend, and we talk about a topic, a life topic, or like where we want to go in life, and kind of like, you know, kind of understand like that we're all going through something, we're all going through our own little adventure. And so, yeah. All right.
Definitely.
Okay.